Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the Security News Update for August 13th, 2023. In the Privacy Alerts Department, hackers in Belarus are operating on behalf of, I don't know, actually. I started to say on behalf of Belarus, but they're going after foreign diplomats in Belarus. They have been eavesdropping on the communications, and apparently they're doing this likely with the assistance of some of the Belarus ISPs. Now, before you say, well, that's Belarus and we don't necessarily care about that, the reality is that what they did would be really hard without insider help. And so that's why we think the Belarus ISPs were helping them. We already know in the United States, we've already seen with every major cell phone provider that bribing employees to do things that are illegal is apparently pretty cheap. So I think we should probably assume that this is going on in the United States as well. It hasn't come to light yet. So just kind of a word to the wise: assume that anything that your ISPs see, they could be listening to, or someone who is in cahoots with an employee, not with the company, could be helping them. Next, DCSA, who is the DoD entity that monitors and reviews and assists cleared defense contractors who process classified information, is finally, after too many years, going to start asking about controlled unclassified information. Among the questions they're going to be asking in your next cleared security review is, do any of your contracts include requirements for protecting controlled unclassified information? The answer to that, unless you're really, really unusual, is going to be yes. And then the next question is, have you fully implemented the requirements of NIST 800-171? Which the answer to that, if you tell the truth, is no, because virtually no one is fully implemented that. And at least right now, this is not going to cause you to fail your security audit. So that's good news. But I would not expect that to last very long. I would expect relatively shortly that they will change their mind on that. Maybe, I guess they give them a year, maybe. Right now, they're collecting data to see really how bad things are. But I think what's going to happen pretty quickly, especially after CMMC it gets released, is that they're going to change their tune and say, yeah, that's kind of a problem. Because theoretically, if you have CUI requirements in your contract and you're not complying with 800-171, you're in breach of your contract. So I don't know how long DCSA can just pretend that that didn't happen, but that's what they're going to do for right now. In the software and hardware department, Google is increasing the frequency of Chrome updates. Chrome represents about 60+% of all of the browser usage, so that's a good thing. They're going to update it about once a week, so you should be prepared to go off and deal with that inside your organization. In the patches department, this time it's Adobe's turn. They have released more than 30 patches, which is not a huge number in the grand scheme of things, given the amount of software they make. But 16 of them are rated critical. That's a big number. So check out what Adobe products you're running and make sure you are patching them. Next, in the important issues department, CISA, who's the one who's kind of in charge of the newly created Cybersecurity Review Board, in light of the recent Microsoft breach by the Chinese, CISA has convened the Cybersecurity Review Board and told them to go look at the security, the safety of cloud computing. This will be, I think, a fascinating report, because unless these guys are a bunch of liars, which I don't think they are, we're going to find they're going to say there's a lot of challenges there. I don't think they're going to necessarily go off and say, gee, stop using the cloud. But they'll probably tell the truth and say, first of all, most people are not implementing things very securely, and secondly, there's a lot of gaps in the process. So it'll be interesting to see. Unlike the NTSB, the Cyber Safety Review Board is required to generate their report very quickly. I think it's like 60 or maybe 90 days. So expect to see a report soon. Also expect to see parts of the report redacted, especially if it's really, really unflattering. So we shall have to see about that. In the legislative and legal department, two more members of the Pentagon, in this case Navy sailors, have been charged with espionage. This has not been a good year for the Pentagon. Both of these folks are of Chinese descent. Jin Jiao Wei, aka Patrick Wei, and Wenheng Zhao, I'm probably butchering their names, aka Thomas, each pleaded not guilty. Wei told allegedly a fellow sailor that he was being recruited by Beijing for what he described as quite obviously effing espionage. So, and he didn't bother to report this. Instead, he handed off information, pictures of ships, weapons, deployment plans, manuals, and information on the ship he was on, which is the Essex, their weaknesses. This points to a huge problem with insider threat, which is a problem everywhere, by the way, even in small companies. The thing that's amazing to me, continues to be amazing, I've been in this game for a long time, and privy to both, public and classified stories, is how little it takes to get people to commit espionage and run the risk of being locked up for the rest of their life, or potentially even being executed. Each of these guys was paid less than $15,000. And, I have heard stories of, not stories, I mean facts, of, people potentially compromising $100 million weapon system for $3,000. So, it's really interesting. And this kind of goes along the thing with the telecom providers. People can be bought, and apparently it doesn't take very much to buy them, which is kind of flabbergasted me. I mean, if you wanted me to commit espionage, you better give me extradition to a non-friendly country and enough money for the rest of my life, and then some. It's not. I don't get it, but whatever. We're seeing the interim output of the sausage called the National Defense Authorization Act. NDAA falls into the category of must-pass bill, and everything but the kitchen sink falls in there. So what we're seeing potentially, and still subject to change because this is not the final bill, is limits on investments in China, which would be a good thing. Improvements to data sharing within the DoD, which is pretty crappy. Oversight of AI in financial services, UFO transparency, I mean, they throw everything in there. Improved cybersecurity, which is going to be at the State Department, creating a chief AI officer, which is also going to be in state, which is a little kind of weird place for it to be. But I'm guessing it's designed to be facilitate multinational coordination. Enhanced transparency for crypto transactions, rules for disclosing which smart devices are recording you, and a bunch of other stuff. So the bill is not done. The sausage is not fully cooked, but it is starting to come out of the grinder, and these are all good things. And what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years since the Cyberspace Solarium Commission is a lot of good stuff coming out of the NDAA. As I have said multiple times, Section 702 of the FISA Act expires at the end of this year. A lot of people inside the federal government say that it is really important in helping them find terrorists, and I suspect it might be. The White House made recommendations about curtailing the FBI's access to the data because of very, very public missteps on the part of the FBI. And even though they continue to get chastised by everybody in creation. They continue to make missteps. So the White House is suggesting that maybe the FBI shouldn't have access to 702 data. That's not going to make people in the Hoover building very happy. But it's either that or Section 702 goes bye-bye completely. And I think nobody wants that, or I guess some people might want that, but I don't think that's the right answer. And the problem is that 99% or some number close to that of the time the FBI does the right stuff, but the 1% of the time they do the wrong stuff. I mean, it's really ugly and really bad, and publicity-wise, it's really horrible. And it just may not be recoverable, at least not in the short term. In the education department, the SEC passed new cybersecurity rules. AmLaw 100 law firm Alston Bird has created a good summary of the key points. While in theory this only applies to publicly traded companies, that's not really true. So let me tell you how I think this is going to come down. This will affect publicly traded companies, and then they are going to go off in their contracts with their vendors, say, if you choose to do business with us, or if we choose to engage you to do business with us, you will comply with the same security disclosure requirements that we do. What that means is you could be a 10-person company selling to some publicly traded company, and you will be required to disclose a material cybersecurity breach in 4 business days. Period. End of conversation. No options. You'll also have to increase the information you provide about executive oversight and, in bigger companies, boards, and smaller companies, executive management, management of cybersecurity, and you need to have a clear plan to figure out what the hell material really means. So if you think this only applies to publicly traded companies, my opinion, and it's only that because it won't be a law, is that you're wrong. It will apply to a lot more. And I think we'll see, this rule goes into effect in December. I think we'll see a lot of publicly traded companies adding new contract terms in their contracts with their vendors to say, by the way, you get to follow the same SEC rules that we do. In the breaches department, Colorado is warning of a massive ransomware attack. They are not providing any details, which is not comforting, other than they say that it could affect millions of people. The challenge is because you can keep data, people do. And that doesn't mean it's the right thing, but nonetheless, it's what people do. So in this particular case, the data that was compromised includes high school student information back to 2004, college student data back to 2007, a bunch of other stuff. And of course, it really annoys me. Now that the horse is out of the barn's burned to the ground, and the debris has been cleaned up, they're saying, gee, we ought to go improve cybersecurity. Well, that's not very comforting. Now, the challenge, of course, is that it's almost impossible to sue the government. And even rules like the Colorado Privacy Act has exemptions for educational institutions because they're supposedly the security is managed by FERPA. Apparently that didn't work. So we shall see what happens there. More on that later once we find out. In the daily news update, the next frontier in fraud, but definitely not the last. We've seen that there's been a significant amount of fraud in Zelle transactions. People, convincing other people to send them money by Zelle, and of course, the problem with peer-to-peer or instantaneous money transfers is that once it's gone, it's gone. Maybe you can get it back, but only if the other end cooperates or if they're really stupid. Either of those are possible. Well, now the feds are rolling out instant payments, just like Zelle. And so, many more banks will take advantage of this service just to be competitive because it's being run by the Fed as opposed to a private company. And in the case of Zelle, one of their competitors, unless you're one of the big banks. The law still hasn't changed. And so there are no protections for consumers who accidentally or as a result of a malicious act on the part of somebody else send money to the wrong person, you are likely out of that money. So, you as a business, you as an employee, you as a human being need to be aware of that. Next, Zoom didn't work out quite well for them, but quietly amended their terms of service back in March, included terms that said that we can use your data for anything we want, including training AI. When the media started reporting on this, as I like to say, the caca hit the rotating air movement device, and Zoom said, well, and then they changed the changes just a little bit, but not really very much. So really, they're in a point now where they still plan to go off and use most of your data, just not a little bit is off limits, to go off and train AI and potentially sell it. The way the terms say, they can do whatever they want. So, just be forewarned. Next, car makers. The sales of new cars hit a high back in 2019, I guess, where they're selling about 17 million cars a year. The last couple of years, they've been selling about 13 million cars. But they figured out a great way to go off and improve the balance sheet, which is, all of that data that the connected car generates, they're keeping that and they're selling that. And in the terms of service of your car, I'm sure you read the terms of service of buying a car, right? I mean, everybody does that. They can use it whatever they want to use it for. It says, one of the large research firms anticipates that they're going to need to transmit about 10 billion gigabytes of data a month. So if you think about that, I don't know how you do this, but if you said, a byte of data is worth X cents, and you've got 10 billion gigabytes of data that you could potentially sell every month, they probably don't care whether they sell any cars or not. They probably will make more money off of selling your data than they make off selling your car. So, again, be forewarned. In the news bites department, the police in Ireland published a list of all of the police officers in the country. Not good, including their personal information and stuff. They figured it out pretty quickly. They took it down, but months later, they still don't know who accessed it. This is not so much, I think, a function of their incompetence as the fact that their systems suck. And they really literally don't know, because they don't track that, which is kind of embarrassing. But if you're a police officer there, your private data is out there, and so be it. Multiple banks were fined in excess of $500 million because they decided to let employees use messaging apps like iMessage and Signal. This is a warning to anybody who is in the regulated space. If you're required to go off and save data and you don't stop your employees from using encrypted messaging like Telegram, iMessage, Signal, whatever, the feds may well be coming after you. Next, hosting provider CloudZ is accused of hosting lots of illegal traffic. I anticipate them being shut down relatively shortly. And CISA says that PC makers should use security by design for the secure boot process, called UEFI. It's kind of about time. But apparently there's a lot of folks that are not doing that. And as a result of that, the secure boot process is anything but secure. So, so be it. And I think I have one more item here, but I'm looking, so bear with me. Anyway, I can't find it. But if we can help you with any of these things, please reach out to us. And until next time, stay safe.